rang me up in like 3.4 seconds. Gave me my receipt. I was like, wow, now I'm creating a line because I didn't have time to think. It's like, how do you guys do that all day? You know, QT. He went like this. So I was like, wow. And there wasn't really an answer. So I was asking him, you know, like, how do you do it all day? And it's really quick at QT. Gas is $2.56 from here. Go. Whoa. They're so quick. They took my canister, my hydro flask. It's like, hey, give me my hydro flask back. I'll put ice in that. So they're gonna get the gas. I don't know if they're how quick they are, but maybe they're not as quick as I thought. Hang on a second. Oh yeah, they're quick. Never mind. It says $10. All right, cool. All right. Way to pick up some Whataburger in off of Roof Snow, the one that I was talking about the other day. And I want to talk about dissolves in filmmaking. Like, a dissolve is there to, let's say that one scene has ended and then a new scene has begun. It can be that way. It's also called a cross dissolve. Some might say a cross fade, but it's a cross dissolve, I think is what they say. I've heard it even been called a mix. You know, I don't like using the word mix because I use that for sound. But dissolve is what iMovie uses. And I used to not use dissolve, you know, as a vernacular at all. Because the old school dissolve would be like, everything would be blurry and then it would go back into focus. And that's where dissolve came from. They'd take the camera and they make it out of focus, then they bring it back into focus, and that they'd be in a new area, a new scene, and it was a quick way to what they call dissolve the scene, and then to kind of like resolve too. It's kind of rhymes with dissolve, resolve and dissolve. It's hard to say, you know, because one of my favorite vloggers, Breck Roll, who has his own show, Escaping the Mouse, he does dissolves for every single scene is a dissolve. It never stops dissolving. And it works because it's his style, you know. But like a cut, sometimes I think it has continuation. Okay, so it creates like a rhythm, almost like a drum banging on a snare, right? Or a drum, like tick, 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 it keeps it going, right? So you're gonna have a scene where a series of cuts, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Alfred Hitchcock did it in Psycho. So there's all these little tiny, it's like 172 different separate shots. They call them shots, but really what they are, they're cuts. because he's put it all together like a jigsaw puzzle. And Alfred Hitchcock has talked about this a lot when it comes to filmmaking. So he put everything together like a jigsaw puzzle. And the cuts were all put together in a certain way to create motion within the horror of the lady getting stabbed in the shower in Psycho, and the shower sequence. So she's getting, it's all cut. So you can use cuts to create motion, but also to create emotion and like horror. It can be used. He could have done dissolves for all of those separate shots, and it probably still would have worked, and probably would have been pretty cool. I think when Gus Van Sant recreated it, it was done in mostly cuts too, almost exactly the same. So cuts and dissolves are different. So I'm going to be honest, I don't watch all my vlogs. Now, I do watch some of them, and I do lay them all out, though. I do all my editing in my head, which I've heard Spielberg does too. So I try to do it in my head because it saves a lot of time. It saves a lot of money to do everything in your head. And know, like, if the next shot after this cuts to Whataburger, I'm okay with that as long as I'm planning it now. But I'm not doing that right now because I'm talking. But what I try to do in cuts is, if I'm speaking or if I'm trying to make a point, I try to use cuts. Because if I go into a dissolve, it can be humorous because it seems like I've been talking for like a long, long time. And the same thing is going on, because dissolves can also represent time change. Like when something dissolves into another thing, it's as if a lot of time has passed. So it can represent time changing. And that can be humorous, because a guy talking for all of eternity and then he goes to somewhere else, he's still talking. There's comedy in that. It's been Mike Judge has done it. Other comic filmmakers have done it. So, but I find that cut is used more in drama. And when you cut something and it cuts to the next on the transition, I'm talking right here, this whole conversation is about transition. So, if I swiped, that can represent like turning a page. That was one of my lasers going off right here. Kind of see it. But if I swipe across, that can represent like a new beginning kind of thing. I did it sometimes throughout some of the vlogs, mostly. I think I stopped doing it, but when a day would pass, even if it was midnight. So if it was 12 o'clock and then it went to 12:01 a.m., then I would swipe to show me that that's the next day. Because a lot of it's note-taking. Now, there's another thing that's different than a swipe, and I'll have to look it up. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say swipe? I meant wipe. Sorry about that. A wipe. Okay. I think there's another one called swipe, but a wipe is like that. I'll look it up in a minute. But anyway, that is kind of also, it could be like another day. I think Star Wars, Lucas did it, and it was kind of like, turn the page, But anyway, it's to be studied, like why dissolve here and why cut, and it's usually has to do with rhythm and then things like that. It's like a lot of like music. Music, sometimes there's dissolves and there's cuts and things like that in music. So you have a cut and you have a dissolve, and music will dissolve into itself, and then it'll release and cut and stuff. But listen, I'm gonna be honest with you, a lot of times I just lay it all out and I hit the button and I just put it aside, so it all will dissolve into one another. That meant I was just too tired. I wanted to release the information of what happened that day. I didn't have any chance to be artistic or anything. And I know those dissolves are harder to go back and change, because it's harder to go back and change a dissolve, and it's not hard to go back and change a cut, because you can take the very beginning and the very end and you can do what you want with it. But if you dissolve them together, then it's very difficult to go back. Now, I don't know what the digital stuff can do nowadays, but back in the day when you were using actual real film, it would have been very difficult to go back and change a dissolve into a cut. It probably could have been done, but it would have been very, very difficult because you actually lay the film on top of one another and splice it together at different points so that the film is translucent and you would see through those little points of when it would make a dissolve. It's an illusion. It says if you're looking through the film on two different points of it. So the filmmaker was kind of saying this is what it is at that point, and you're not going to change it. And Kubrick did it a lot, which means if they went back and made a Kubrick, restored a Kubrick film and took out all the dissolves, it would be a different film. But it'd be interesting to see. But it is interesting why. I would like to find more information on YouTube. Why do we dissolve and why do we cut? You know, I think it has to do with rhythm. I think it has to do with maybe a signature piece of the filmmaker. I know Kubrick was a big dissolver, especially in The Shining. He experimented with the whole aspect of dissolve. I like the idea that things can mix in and you can have a cross dissolve on a very slow scale. Although iMovie, on its most basic form of iMovie, you know, your free iMovie that you can use, you only have up to 2 seconds. So you can do 0.5, which is very similar to a cut, but it's different because a cut will make a click noise if you don't fix it. It'll make a little tapping noise because of your thumb. See my thumb? The microphone is hearing your thumb hit the actual phone. So you're listening to the actual filmmaker make a noise. You can go back and fix that by shortening that sequence and moving it back, or you can leave the sequence, you can detach the sound, and then you can mess with it where it'll go away. You can move the sound inward, and you can leave one sound part of it over the other, which is called an L cut or a J cut if it's before. You have the option of L cut or J cut, where the sound will come in early, and I do that too sometimes, before its transitions and switches, which it sounds very professional when you hear that. The major problem that separates cinema and vlogging is going to be sound, because sound in a movie is cut like almost like an album on a record. Every part of the sound makes a purpose. So they're going to lay down one soundtrack probably throughout the whole movie, but it's also going to blend in a certain way where it's not really recognizable, so it doesn't cause attention to itself and become too Brechtian, you know, too much like, oh, you're watching a movie. You forget that you're watching a movie when everything is cut a certain way. But when you're watching a vlog and you hear all this stuff, right, you know that this guy's holding the camera, you know. You can tell, right? So there's a big difference between vlogging and then making a narrative feature masterpiece cinematic stuff. But they still use, in vlogs, they still use dissolves and they still use cuts. Anyway, I gotta pick up this anal retentive. There's not 172. There's actually 50 film cuts in the Psycho scene, but there's 70 through 77 angles, depending on if you count certain angles in it. So there's debate in the Alfred Hitchcock scene and the Psycho scene. There's debate on exactly how much is going on there number-wise. One person will say 77, another person will say 70, different angles. But there's 50, if I'm not mistaken, if you count it, there's 50 film cuts. And that's what I was talking about, film cuts, is what I was talking about in transition in dissolving and then going into a film cut. Film cuts are very kind of noticeable because it cuts, and whenever you were cutting it in film, you would slice it downward and then paste it together side by side. On a dissolve, you would slice it downward and then you would pull it back over the other part of the film. Anyway, that's what I just wanted to say. The Alfred Hitchcock thing was 50 film cuts and up to 77 different angles throughout that scene. Pretty cool. So it's like different angles and stuff like, you know, going on, you know. The order was completed at 3:19 and she dropped the fries So the order's been going on. This is a fast food establishment known as Whataburger. It's been going on for 26 minutes. I'm sorry. That's a long time for a couple of burgers. Oh, here we go. All right, I really do appreciate it. Thanks so much. Still haven't got any order yet. She dropped the fries. She told me about it. She dropped the fries. I guess I got here at 3, or she said it was right at 3:19. And I don't know how long it takes to make fries. But they're getting it ready right now. This has got to be a record right now because 26 minutes. That's a long time at a fast food place, and they're only getting a couple burgers. Right, here we go. All right. And you put the hot apple pie in there? You put the pie in there? Jesus, love. All right, yeah, I know. Yeah, okay. I got her to put the pie in there. She's trying not to put the pie in there. Anyway. Boy, man, I'll tell you what. I don't know who they're serving, but you show up as a delivery driver at this place. Yeah, this is a place where I almost lost my life. These rednecks were waiting to kill me when I was about, I was probably about 17. They were waiting about right over there. Right over there. They're parked. They called my friend a P.s.s. You're a P.s.s. And they're like, let's fight. And so it got Rebel Without a Cause, and we all hit the road here to go meet somewhere to fight. I don't even know where we were going to fight. I ended up turning back around and coming back, and there was a police officer there, so I told him what was going on. They were throwing beer bottles in our car. I was about 17. Man, it could have been all over that night. Anyway, that's where they arrested him. They arrested him right over here off of Buenos Aires, whatever that place is right there. Looks like it's just coming up right here. Lately, I've been kind of cracking up. I think it's because I'm not getting enough sleep. Because our hours, we changed. Now we're doing like morning shifts and stuff. It's right there. You know, when you don't get enough sleep, you kind of giggle. Anyway, that's going to be a real nice setup. Really nice. Once I get it all going, you know. I dig the Scarecrow. These are real nice houses. They really are. It's a real nice mailbox right there. A mail truck too. There's Firefly. Yay! I'm advertising. Anyway, you can barely see it, but if you look at the little box on top of well, it's not a box. That guy's a big fan of the show. It's like a sign that goes on top of your car. It's called Firefly. You make money simply by driving by. The Republicans love it. Because, see, the Republicans, they want you burning gas because they make money. They're designed to make money off the burning of gas. The Democrat makes money off solar power. So these solar powered cars are going to be controlled by robots, and it's going to be weird because you're going to have supervisors. You're going to have supervisors in the car, but they're not going to be driving. They're just going to be sitting. There's all kinds of cool shows that are going to be on NBC, ABC, if it's still around, definitely YouTube, about robot cars and solar power. And it's going to hurt the Republicans because they're not going to be able to burn their gas. And those cars are going to go hundreds and hundreds of miles on solar power. They're already doing it. Now, they already have electric semis. A lot of the semis are going to be electric, running on lithium batteries or different types of batteries. And they'll be charged, various ways. They'll have nuclear semis and stuff like that eventually that will never stop. And they'll all be robots. Every single one, all the semis, all the 18-wheelers are all robots driving around. And my son, who I no longer saw after the age of 5, he lives with his mom somewhere. I don't know where they are, really. I'm not allowed to know because of the Republicans and the church and stuff like that. He wants to drive cars. So what he's going to be doing is probably supervising a car. Now, if he wants to drive it for a living. Now, if he wants to race cars, that's a whole different story. They'll have people racing cars for a long time. But driving is going to change in the next probably 20 years or so. And all of these cars, even cop cars, if there's police in the future, semis, work vehicles, FedEx, all of it's going to be solar power, and it's all going to be controlled by computers. And you're just going to be taking the ride. You'll be reading a book while you get to your next destination because the car will drive itself. So these type of jobs, which they call rideshare, they call fleet, delivery, they'll be supervised. So it'll be there for the sake of supervision, so it'll be like, to make sure that, the food is well protected, the food will be supervised, or if it's a product, that the product gets to the neighbor's door and things like that. And that'll go on for a few decades too, until finally we create a robot that does a lot of the work for us, and we'd probably be sitting at home, if we're living above ground, if we're not living in caves or underground, like in underground bunkers that are fortified with maybe 5 feet of steel and metal and stuff like that, whatever. We don't know what the future is going to be like, really, but it'll be robots, 100% sure. We're going to be riding around in robot cars here pretty soon. Now, a lot of the cars will be flying. So you'll have drones and stuff deliver this fast food to you. They'll just drop it off at your doorstep, and then you'll hear a little drone noise, beep, beep, and then your doorbell will ring. It'll be just like the Jetsons, Jetsons, meet the Jetsons. That's the Flintstones. Can't think of the Jetsons. Look at this setup right here. That's real nice at night. That's real nice. The Jetsons. I don't remember how the Jetsons went. Anyway, this is cool too. This is cool stuff too. You can see the difference in the water level right here. That's real nice right there. You don't want to cross this when it's raining too much though, because you could completely get drowned, and that's very dangerous. The robots will though. The robots won't even know until they program them. There'll be a lot of mistakes. It'll take a long time. All of these shows, my shows will be watched and everything, because it'll help the robots and everything. That's why these shows are happening. That's why I go like this. Because these roads will be explored, just like robots. Anyway, I'll drop this at your door. Merry Christmas.